The restaurant's elegant murmur died into absolute silence as a single piano note pierced through the air. Not just any note. A note that made Victoria Ashford's wine glass slip from her trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor in slow motion as her entire world tilted on its axis. Her chest tightened, her breath caught. Because that note, that impossibly familiar melody beginning to unfold from the corner of the room where the staff usually remained invisible, was the song she thought had been buried with her first love 15 years ago. The song only one man in the entire world could play, a man she believed was gone forever. Let me take you back 3 hours earlier to when Victoria Ashford walked into Emerald Heights, the most exclusive restaurant in Chicago, carrying the weight of her empire on shoulders that had forgotten how to relax. At 38, she had built Ashford Industries into a tech giant worth $3 billion. She wore power suits like armor-commanded boardrooms with a single glance, and had earned a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and utterly untouchable. People whispered that Victoria Ashford had ice water in her veins. They weren't entirely wrong. But what they didn't know, what no one could see beneath the perfectly applied makeup and the designer clothes, was that her heart had stopped beating the day David disappeared. In that same restaurant in the back corner near the kitchen doors, Elijah Carter was clearing table 12 for the 4th time that evening. At 39, his hands, scarred and calloused from years of manual labor, moved with practiced efficiency as he stacked plates and wiped down surfaces. His reflection in the polished silverware showed a face marked by exhaustion and something deeper, something that looked like grief that had settled into the bones and made itself at home. He wore the standard busboy uniform, a simple black vest over a white shirt practically invisible to the wealthy diners who never looked twice at the help. And that was exactly how Elijah wanted it. Invisibility was safety. Anonymity was survival. Because Elijah Carter had a secret that would shatter worlds if it ever came to light. His real name was David Mitchell. And 15 years ago, he had been the love of Victoria Ashford's life. 15 years earlier, David Mitchell had been a different person entirely. He was 24, a scholarship student at the Chicago Conservatory of Music with calloused fingers that could coax magic from piano keys and dreams bigger than his empty wallet. He lived in a studio apartment in the rough part of town where the heat barely worked and the neighbors' arguments bled through paper-thin walls. But none of that mattered when he sat at the conservatory's grand piano, alone in the practice rooms that smelled of wood polish and old dreams. That's where music lived for him. In those quiet moments, David wasn't poor, wasn't struggling, wasn't wearing shoes with holes in the soles. He was limitless Victoria Sterling. As she was known then, came from a completely different world. She was 23, the only daughter of Harrison Sterling, who owned half the commercial real estate in Chicago. She had been raised in a Gold Coast mansion with 12 bedrooms, educated at private schools, where tuition cost more than most people earned in a year, and groomed from birth to marry well and take her place in society's upper echelon. Her calendar was filled with charity galas, country club luncheons, and carefully orchestrated encounters with eligible bachelors from appropriate families. But Victoria had a secret rebellion brewing inside her chest. She hated every suffocating minute of her predetermined life. They met at a fundraiser her father hosted for the arts. David had been hired to play background music, invisible entertainment, for people who wouldn't remember his face 5 minutes after the last note. He sat at the piano in the corner playing Chopin while wealthy donors discussed stock portfolios and vacation homes. But Victoria heard him, really heard him. She stood by the terrace doors, champagne untouched in her hand, and felt something crack open inside her chest. The way his hands moved across the keys, The way his entire body seemed to disappear into the music. The way he played like he was pouring his soul out for anyone brave enough to listen. When he finished, she walked straight to him, ignoring her father's glare, and said 5 words that would change both their lives forever. "Teach me to play like that." David had looked up at her, this impossibly beautiful woman, in a dress that probably cost more than his entire wardrobe, and saw past the designer labels and perfect posture. He saw loneliness that matched his own. He saw someone trapped in a different kind of poverty, the kind where you have everything except the freedom to be yourself. And so he said yes. They started meeting in secret, late-night sessions in the conservatory's practice rooms, where she would slip in through the back entrance, and he would teach her not just how to play piano, but how to feel music in her bones. They would sit side by side on the piano bench, his scarred hands guiding her delicate fingers across the keys, and somewhere between Beethoven and Bach, they fell hopelessly, recklessly in love. For 6 months, they existed in a bubble of stolen moments and whispered promises. David wrote music for her compositions that captured the way she laughed, the way she bit her lip when concentrating, the way she looked at him like he was the only real thing in her manufactured world. He called his favorite piece Victoria's Song, a melody that started soft and uncertain, then built into something powerful and inevitable, just like their love. They talked about running away together. David would finish his degree, get a position with a symphony orchestra, and they would build a life where money didn't matter and love was enough. Victoria believed him. For the first time in her carefully controlled life, she believed in something her father hadn't approved first. But their secret couldn't stay hidden forever. Victoria's father discovered them one night when he came to the conservatory to discuss a donation. He found his daughter wrapped in the arms of a scholarship student, their laughter echoing through empty hallways, her lips kiss swollen, and her eyes bright with the kind of happiness that made Harrison Sterling's blood run cold. Not because his daughter was happy, but because she was happy with the wrong kind of man. A poor man. A man with no connections, no family money, no future that Harrison could control. The confrontation was brutal. Harrison didn't yell. He didn't have to. Men with that kind of power never raise their voices. They simply state facts and watch worlds crumble. He told Victoria that if she continued this relationship, he would cut her off completely. No trust fund, no inheritance, no family. More than that, he would make sure David never worked in music again. Harrison Sterling owned the board of directors at the conservatory. He funded half the symphony orchestras in the Midwest. One phone call, and David's dreams would evaporate like smoke. Victoria's father was offering her a choice, but they both knew it wasn't really a choice at all. It was an ultimatum wrapped in a threat. Victoria begged David to fight with her. She was ready to walk away from everything, from the money and the mansion and the life her father had planned. But David looked at the woman he loved more than breathing and saw her future stretching out before them. If she stayed with him, she would lose everything. She would resent him eventually, when the romance faded and the reality of poverty set in, when she couldn't afford the life she'd been raised for, when his love stopped being enough to fill the gap where her family used to be. David made a decision that night that destroyed them both. He told Victoria he didn't love her enough to let her ruin her life for him. He was cruel about it, saying things designed to make her hate him, to make the break clean. He told her she was playing at rebellion, that she would never survive in his world, that she was too soft, too spoiled, too weak. Every word was a lie that tasted like poison on his tongue. But he watched her face shatter, watched her eyes fill with tears, and then harden into something cold and unreachable, and he knew he had succeeded. Victoria Sterling walked out of that practice room with her head held high, and her heart left bleeding on the piano bench. David disappeared 3 days later. He withdrew from the conservatory, left his apartment with only what he could carry, and vanished into a life so different from his dreams that sometimes he wondered if the old David Mitchell had ever existed at all. What Victoria didn't know, what no one knew, was that her father hadn't stopped at threats. Harrison Sterling had men who specialized in making problems disappear. They found David alone in his apartment and delivered a message wrapped around broken ribs and a fractured wrist. Leave Chicago. Change your name. Forget Victoria Sterling existed, or the next visit would be permanent. David became Elijah Carter in a Memphis hospital, signing the new identity paperwork with his unbroken hand, while nurses asked questions he couldn't answer truthfully. He spent 2 years drifting through cities where no one knew his face, working construction jobs and washing dishes, keeping his head down and his past buried. The piano became something he couldn't even look at without feeling like his chest was caving in. Music was Victoria, and Victoria was everything he had lost. Then came Noah. A one-night stand with a woman named Sarah, who was running from her own demons. She got pregnant, decided to keep the baby, and for 8 precious months, Elijah had a partner in survival. They weren't in love, but they were both damaged enough to understand each other. Sarah died in childbirth. Due to complications the understaffed hospital didn't catch in time. And suddenly Elijah was holding a newborn son, this tiny human, who depended on him completely, and for the first time since leaving Chicago, he had a reason to keep breathing. He named the boy Noah after new beginnings and surviving floods. He moved to Chicago 6 years ago because sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight, and because part of him, the part that still dreamed, wanted to be near Victoria, even if she never knew he existed. Meanwhile, Victoria's life had unfolded exactly as her father planned. She married Roger Ashford 2 years after David disappeared. Roger was appropriate, a Harvard graduate from old money with political connections and the right last name. The wedding was featured in Town and Country magazine. Victoria looked beautiful in her Vera Wang dress, walking down the aisle of a cathedral while 500 guests watched. No one noticed that her smile never reached her eyes. The marriage lasted 6 years before Roger's affair with his secretary made it impossible to maintain the facade any longer. The divorce was quiet, expensive, and left Victoria with the company Roger's family had built, which she transformed into a tech empire through sheer force of will and 18-hour workdays. She became Victoria Ashford CEO and buried Victoria Sterling, the girl who once believed in love so deep that most days she forgot she had ever existed. Which brings us back to Emerald Heights on a Tuesday evening in November. Victoria had come to the restaurant to meet with potential investors, men in expensive suits who wanted a piece of her company. The meeting had gone well. She had smiled at the right moments, made strategic promises, and closed a deal that would net her another $40 million in venture capital. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow, going through motions perfected over 15 years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. Elijah was working table 12 in her section, though she didn't notice him at first. Why would she? Rich people never really see the help. We're wallpaper background noise, invisible hands that refill water glasses and clear away plates. Elijah had learned to use that invisibility like a shield. He kept his head down, his movements efficient, his interactions minimal. Most days he could work an entire shift without anyone looking directly at his face. That's how he had survived for 6 years, hiding in plain sight just blocks from the woman whose memory he carried like a scar across his heart. But tonight was different. Tonight, Marcus, the restaurant's pianist, called in sick at the last minute. The manager, Thomas, was in a panic. Emerald Heights prided itself on live piano music during dinner service. It was part of the ambiance, the experience that justified the $400 per person price tag. Thomas was frantically calling every pianist in his contact list, offering double rates, but it was Tuesday night, and everyone worth hiring was already booked. Elijah was passing by the manager's office when he heard Thomas on the phone, desperation creeping into his usually composed voice. And something in Elijah, maybe the part that had never quite died, even after 15 years of silence, made him stop, made him knock, made him say words he never thought he would speak again. "I can play." Thomas looked up surprised to even register that the busboy was speaking. "What piano? I can play." Elijah's voice was steady, even though his heart was hammering against his ribs. "I'm classically trained. I can cover tonight." Thomas was desperate enough to take a chance. He led Elijah to the baby grand piano, positioned in the restaurant's corner, where soft lighting created an intimate atmosphere. Elijah sat down on the bench, his scarred hands hovering over keys he hadn't touched with intention in 15 years. His fingers trembled. This was a mistake. He should walk away. He should stay invisible. But then his hands dropped to the keys, and muscle memory older than his pain took over. He started with something safe, Debussy's Clair de Lune, letting the familiar notes guide him back to a part of himself he thought had died in that Memphis hospital. The music flooded through him like breaking a dam. 15 years of silence, of suppression, of pretending he was someone else, all of it dissolved in the cascade of notes flowing from his fingers. Elijah closed his eyes and let himself remember what it felt like to be David. To be the man who believed music could change the world. To be the man who loved Victoria Sterling with every atom of his being. The restaurant's ambient noise softened as diners unconsciously stopped their conversations to listen. This wasn't background music anymore. This was something else. Something real. Victoria noticed. Of course she noticed. She had built a career on reading people, on sensing opportunities, and threats on paying attention to details others missed. The music caught her mid-sentence right as she was discussing quarterly projections with her investors. Her hand froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. That playing. The way the pianist disappeared into the music, the way each note seemed to carry weight beyond sound. It was hauntingly familiar. She turned in her seat, trying to see the pianist, but the lighting and the angle made it difficult. All she could make out was a silhouette, a man with broad shoulders and lowered head, his entire being focused on the instrument beneath his hands. Something twisted in Victoria's chest. An old ache she had learned to ignore surfacing like a creature from deep water. She forced herself to turn back to her investors to smile and nod and pretend her hands weren't shaking. But she couldn't stop listening. And when the pianist transitioned seamlessly from Debussy to Chopin to a piece she recognized because David had played it for her in a practice room on a night that felt like it belonged to someone else's life, Victoria's carefully constructed armor cracked just slightly. Elijah finished his set and stood quickly, intending to disappear back into the kitchen before anyone could really look at him. But Thomas was there, beaming with relief and gratitude. That was incredible. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Elijah mumbled something vague about studying years ago, kept his face angled away from the dining room, and escaped through the kitchen doors. His hands were shaking. Playing again had opened something inside him that he didn't know how to close. For the rest of his shift, he stayed in the back washing dishes and avoiding the dining room, trying to rebuild the walls that music had demolished. But Victoria couldn't let it go. After her investors left, she found herself lingering at her table, ordering another glass of wine she didn't want waiting. She told herself she was just tired, that the music had triggered some old memory, that it meant nothing. But when Thomas passed by, she stopped him. "Your pianist tonight. Who is he?" Thomas looked confused for a moment. "Oh, that was actually Elijah, one of our busboys. Marcus called in sick. Lucky for us, Elijah knew how to play. He's worked here for 3 years and never mentioned it. A busboy." Victoria felt something shift in her perception. She had been in this restaurant dozens of times over the years. How many times had this man cleared her table? How many times had she looked right through him, not seeing, not knowing? The next Tuesday, Victoria did something she had never done before. She requested table 12, specifically the table in the corner near where the pianist sat. Her assistant thought she was losing her mind. Victoria Ashford didn't make reservations at restaurants. Restaurants held tables for her. But Victoria insisted, and now here she was, alone with a book she wasn't reading and a meal she wasn't tasting waiting. She told herself this was insane. She was a grown woman, a CEO with companies to run and boards to manage. She didn't have time to chase ghosts. Marcus was back playing his usual repertoire of safe, familiar classics. Competent, but uninspired. Victoria felt disappointment settle in her stomach like a stone. What had she expected? That the busboy would play again? That she would figure out why his music had affected her so deeply? She was about to leave when she saw him. Elijah Carter, clearing table 14 with quick, efficient movements. And for the first time, Victoria really looked at him. Looked past the uniform and the anonymous face. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that came from manual labor. His hair was cut short, showing the first threads of gray at his temples. His face was weathered, marked by sun and hard work, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth that spoke of exhaustion or pain or both. He was handsome, in a rough, lived-in way that had nothing to do with her world of polished executives and carefully maintained appearances. But it was his hands that made Victoria's breath catch. His hands moving across the table, gathering plates and glasses, were scarred and calloused, marked by years of work. But there was something about the way he moved them, a precision, an unconscious grace, that spoke of muscle memory buried deep. She found herself staring at those hands, and a memory surfaced unbidden and devastating. David's hands, scarred even then from working construction jobs to pay for school, guiding hers across piano keys, teaching her not just how to play, but how to feel. She shook her head, pushing the memory away. She was seeing patterns that didn't exist, making connections that weren't there. This man was a stranger, a busboy who happened to know how to play piano. Nothing more. Elijah felt her eyes on him. He had developed a sixth sense for attention over the years, an awareness of when someone was looking too closely. He kept his face angled away, moved quickly to finish clearing the tables in her section, and planned his escape route through the kitchen. But then Thomas appeared at his elbow, smiling in a way that made Elijah's stomach sink. "Elijah Victoria Ashford would like to speak with you." Table 12. Every instinct Elijah possessed screamed at him to refuse to walk away to maintain the distance that had kept him safe. But refusing would draw attention, would make Thomas ask questions. So Elijah found himself walking toward table 12, toward the woman he had loved and lost, keeping his head lowered and his hands steady through sheer force of will. Victoria looked up as he approached. "You played last week. I wanted to tell you it was beautiful." Her voice was different than Elijah remembered. Harder, colder, with edges that came from years in boardrooms. But underneath, if you knew how to listen, there was a crack. a hint of the girl she used to be. "Thank you, ma'am." Elijah kept his voice neutral. Professional, didn't meet her eyes. "I heard you're normally a busboy." Victoria's tone was curious now, probing. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Elijah could feel the moment stretching, could feel the danger of standing this close to her, of having her attention focused on him. Every second increased the risk that she would see past the years, and the scars, and the deliberate changes that she would recognize something in his face, or his voice, or the way he held himself. "Studied a long time ago," he said carefully. "Life took a different direction." "That's a shame." Victoria was still watching him, and there was something in her expression that Elijah couldn't read. Talent like that shouldn't be wasted clearing tables. It was the wrong thing to say, and Elijah felt anger flash through him, hot and unexpected. She had no idea what waste meant, what sacrifice looked like, what it cost to give up everything for someone who never knew you had done it. But he swallowed the anger, kept his face blank, and said, "We all do what we have to do." He excused himself before she could say anything else, walking away with measured steps when everything in him wanted to run. Victoria watched him go, and the crack in her chest widened. There was something about the way he moved, the way he held pain in his shoulders, like a weight he had carried so long it had become part of his posture. She knew that body language. She saw it in her own mirror every morning. This man was haunted. This man was running from something. And Victoria Ashford had built an empire on her ability to solve puzzles. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria did something completely irrational. She became a regular at Emerald Heights, dining there 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Her assistant thought she had become obsessed with their menu. Her board of directors wondered if she was having a breakdown. But Victoria couldn't explain even to herself why she kept returning. She told herself she was just unwinding, treating herself to good food after long workdays. But the truth was, she was studying Elijah Carter. She watched the way he moved through the restaurant, efficient and nearly invisible. She noticed how he never made eye contact with the wealthy diners, how he seemed to fold himself into shadows. She saw the moment when his jaw would tighten. If a customer was rude, the flash of something that might be anger or might be pain that he would quickly suppress. And she recognized that suppression. She had spent 15 years perfecting the same skill. She started asking casual questions. Thomas, the manager, was happy to share. Elijah Carter had worked at Emerald Heights for 3 years. He was reliable, punctual, never caused problems. He was a single father, had an 8-year-old son he talked about sometimes during breaks. He lived in a modest apartment in Pilsen, took the bus to work, picked up extra shifts whenever they were offered. He was by all accounts exactly what he appeared to be. A man working hard to support his kid. Nothing mysterious, nothing suspicious. So why couldn't Victoria let it go? She hired a private investigator. She told herself it was just due diligence, the same kind of background check she would run on any employee. But she knew she was lying. The report came back surprisingly thin. Elijah Carter had existed for 15 years, starting with a hospital admission in Memphis for injuries consistent with assault. Before that, nothing. No college records, no employment history, no digital footprint. It was as if he had materialized fully formed at age 24. Victoria knew what this meant. Elijah Carter wasn't his real name. This man was hiding from something or someone. The question was why. Meanwhile, Elijah was unraveling. Having Victoria this close week after week was destroying the carefully constructed distance he had maintained for 6 years. Sometimes he would catch her scent when he cleared her table, something expensive and floral that was nothing like the drugstore perfume she used to wear, but underneath it, barely detectable, was something that was purely her. Sometimes she would speak to him small, polite requests, and her voice would hit him like a physical blow. He started making mistakes at work, dropping plates, forgetting orders. Thomas pulled him aside with concern. "Everything okay, Elijah? You seem distracted." Elijah wanted to laugh. Distracted. That was one word for it. The love of his life was sitting 20 feet away night after night, and she had no idea who he was. It was torture and blessing mixed together until he couldn't tell which was which. Noah noticed something was wrong. At 8 years old, Noah Carter was whip-smart and observant with his father's serious eyes and a smile that could light up a room. Elijah tried to be present for his son, tried to focus on homework and dinner and bedtime stories, but his mind kept drifting back to Victoria, to the restaurant, to the impossible situation he had created by playing that piano. One night, Noah climbed into Elijah's lap while they were sitting on their worn couch and asked the question that broke Elijah's heart. "Daddy, why are you so sad?" Elijah held his son tight and lied. "I'm not sad, buddy, just tired. But Noah was too smart for that. You look sad when you think I'm not watching, like something hurts." How could Elijah explain that something did hurt? That it had been hurting for 15 years? That loving someone and losing them didn't end just because you built a new life? That some wounds never fully heal? They just learn to be quiet. Victoria's investigation took an unexpected turn when her PI discovered something interesting. 15 years ago, a David Mitchell had been a student at the Chicago Conservatory of Music. He had withdrawn suddenly right around the time Victoria Sterling's relationship with her mysterious pianist had ended. David Mitchell had been the right age, the right background, the right talent level. And then he had vanished completely. No death certificate. No forwarding address. Just gone. Victoria sat in her office looking at the conservatory records her PI had obtained and felt her hands start to shake. David Mitchell. She hadn't allowed herself to think that name in years. She had convinced herself he was dead because the alternative that he had simply stopped loving her and walked away was too painful to bear. But now she had a name that had disappeared at exactly the right time to line up with Elijah Carter's appearance. She needed to be sure. She needed proof. So Victoria did something she had sworn she would never do. She went to see her father. Harrison Sterling was 73 now, his power diminished, but not gone. His empire passed to others, but his influence still felt. He lived in the same Gold Coast mansion, though it felt emptier now with her mother gone and Victoria estranged. She hadn't spoken to him in 5 years, not since her mother's funeral. But she walked into his study like she was still 23 and desperate, and she asked him a question that had been buried for 15 years. "What did you do to David Mitchell?" Harrison looked up from his desk, and for a moment Victoria saw surprise flicker across his face. Then it smoothed into the cold calculation she remembered too well. "That was a long time ago, Victoria. Why resurrect ancient history?" "What did you do?" Victoria's voice was steel now, the voice that commanded boardrooms. "Did you pay him off? Did you threaten him?" Her father sighed like she was being tedious. "I did what was necessary to protect my daughter from making a catastrophic mistake. That boy was going to ruin your life. I made sure he understood the consequences of pursuing you further. He made the smart choice and disappeared." Victoria felt something crystallize in her chest. Not shock. She had suspected. But confirmation was different. Confirmation meant her father had destroyed the man she loved, had driven him away with threats or worse. And she had spent 15 years believing David had abandoned her willingly. What kind of consequences? Her voice was deadly quiet. Harrison waved a hand dismissively. Nothing permanent, just a message delivered firmly enough that he took it seriously. He was tougher than I expected. Took quite a bit of convincing to make him understand. Quite a bit of convincing. Victoria felt sick. She stood, looked at the man who had raised her, and saw a stranger. "I hope it was worth it," she said softly. "Destroying your daughter's happiness to maintain your sense of control. I hope it kept you warm at night." She left without saying goodbye, drove straight to her office, and pulled up every piece of information she had on Elijah Carter. She laid it out systematically, the way she would approach any business problem. Elijah Carter appeared in Memphis after David Mitchell disappeared. Elijah had scars consistent with a severe beating. Elijah was the right age, the right background. Elijah could play piano the way only someone with conservatory training could play. And something else. Something she had noticed, but not consciously processed until now. The way Elijah held himself when he played, the way his whole body disappeared into the music. She had only known one person who played like that. Only one person who could make a piano sing with that particular combination of technical perfection and raw emotion. David. Elijah was David. Victoria started testing her theory with surgical precision. The next time she came to Emerald Heights, she requested a specific song when Marcus was on break and Elijah was covering. "Do you know Moonlight Sonata?" The third movement. Elijah's hands faltered for just a fraction of a second on the tray he was holding. "I can try, ma'am." He sat at the piano and played it flawlessly with the interpretation that was distinctly his own, adding flourishes and emotional depth that went beyond technical mastery. Victoria watched his hands and felt tears prick her eyes. Those were David's hands. David's playing. No matter how much he had changed physically, this he couldn't disguise. She started leaving him larger tips. $100 bills for clearing a table. At first, Elijah refused them, trying to give them back, but Victoria insisted through Thomas. "For the music," she said. "He deserves it." The money appeared in Noah's school fund, carefully deposited, and Elijah felt the walls closing in. Why was she doing this? What did she want? The tension became unbearable. Every shift Elijah worked was an exercise in controlled panic. Every moment Victoria spent in the restaurant was a knife's edge between discovery and denial. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, and the restaurant was packed. Elijah was covering a large section, moving quickly between tables when he heard a commotion near the entrance. A child's voice, high and scared. "I'm looking for my dad, Elijah Carter. He works here." "Noah." Elijah's heart stopped. His son wasn't supposed to be here. Noah was supposed to be with their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched him during evening shifts. Elijah dropped the tray he was holding and rushed to the entrance. Noah was there, tears streaming down his face, a bruise blooming on his cheek. Mrs. Chen fell. Noah sobbed. "She's hurt. I didn't know what to do. I took the bus here." Elijah dropped to his knees, pulling his son into his arms, checking him over frantically. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Thomas was already on the phone, calling an ambulance for Mrs. Chen. Victoria watched this unfold from her table, watched the busboy transform into a father, watched the way his hands shook as he held his son, watched the terror and love play across his face. And she saw something else. In the restaurant's bright lights, with his face turned up and his guard completely down, she saw past the years and the scars and the deliberate changes. She saw the shape of his jaw, the curve of his mouth, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, even when he was scared. She saw David. Victoria stood up from her table, her wine glass forgotten, her breath coming in short gasps. The restaurant seemed to tilt around her. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Elijah was too focused on Noah to notice her reaction. He was talking to his son in low, soothing tones, promising everything would be okay. Thomas was handling the situation with efficiency, arranging for someone to cover Elijah's tables, assuring him he should take Noah home. That family came first. Elijah picked up his son, held him close, and turned toward the exit. That's when his eyes met Victoria's across the crowded restaurant. Time stopped. The noise of the restaurant faded to white noise. They stared at each other across 20 feet of space and 15 years of silence. Elijah saw the moment recognition finally fully clicked into place. Saw Victoria's face go white. Saw her hand fly to her mouth. Saw her eyes fill with tears that she blinked back furiously. And he knew. She knew. There was no more hiding. No more pretending. The man she thought was David was holding a child in his arms, working as a busboy in a restaurant she frequented. The life she thought he had lived was a lie. Everything was a lie. Except for the truth that blazed between them in that frozen moment. He had never stopped loving her, and she had never stopped loving him. Elijah broke eye contact, first turned, and walked out of the restaurant with Noah in his arms. Each step away from Victoria felt like tearing off his own skin. But he couldn't do this. Not here. Not now. Not with his son traumatized and scared. Noah had to come first. Noah always came first. That's what being a father meant. That's what love looked like when it had no choice but to be practical. He got Noah home, got him cleaned up, got him into bed with his favorite stuffed animal and a glass of water. Mrs. Chen was going to be okay. The neighbor's daughter had called to let them know. Just a bad fall, sprained ankle. She would need a few weeks to recover. Noah finally fell asleep, exhausted from fear and adrenaline, his small hand clutching Elijah's shirt. And Elijah sat in the dark living room of his modest apartment, his head in his hands, and let himself fall apart. 15 years. 15 years of running, of hiding, of building a new life from the ashes of his old one. 15 years of loving a woman from a distance, of knowing she was in the same city, but existing in a different world. And now she knew. Now everything he had sacrificed, everything he had protected her from, was exposed. He didn't know what she would do with this information. Didn't know if she would come looking for answers. Didn't know if she hated him for the deception or pitied him for how far he had fallen. All he knew was that the careful balance he had maintained, the distance that kept them both safe, was shattered beyond repair. Victoria didn't go home that night. She sat in her car outside Emerald Heights for 2 hours, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her breath fogging the windows. David was alive. David had been alive this entire time, living in Chicago, working as a busboy, raising a son alone. The magnitude of it was too large to process. All those years she had spent hating him for leaving. All those nights she had cried herself to sleep, convinced he had never loved her at all. All the ways she had hardened herself, built walls around her heart, turned herself into someone who didn't need anyone. All of it based on a lie. He hadn't left because he stopped loving her. He had left because her father had driven him away. And instead of coming back, Instead of fighting for her, he had disappeared into anonymity and poverty. Why? The question burned through her. Why had he stayed hidden? Why work as a busboy when he had so much talent? Why let her believe he was dead? The anger came then hot and bright. He had stolen 15 years from them. 15 years they could have been together. 15 years of happiness traded for this half-life of secrets and distance. She wanted to storm into his apartment and demand answers. She wanted to shake him and scream at him and make him explain why her suffering had been necessary. But underneath the anger was something else, something that hurt worse. The memory of his face tonight when he was holding his son. The terror and love so evident, it had been like watching someone with their chest cracked open. He was a father, a good father, from the way his son had run to him for help. Which meant David, or Elijah, or whatever he called himself now, had built a whole life she knew nothing about, had loved someone else enough to have a child with them, had moved on in ways she never could. Victoria showed up at Elijah's apartment 3 days later. She had gotten the address from his employment file, had driven past the building twice before finding the courage to park. It was a modest building in Pilsen, the kind where rent was affordable, but the hallways smelled like old cooking, and the elevator was always broken. She climbed 4 flights of stairs, her designer heels clicking on worn linoleum, and knocked on apartment 4C. Elijah opened the door, and the air left his lungs. She was standing in his doorway, this woman who had haunted every moment of the last 15 years, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back her face, without the armor of makeup. She looked more like the Victoria he remembered than the CEO he had been watching from a distance. More like the girl who used to laugh in practice rooms and fall asleep on his shoulder. More like the person she had been before the world taught her to be hard. Victoria. Her name came out like a prayer or a curse, he wasn't sure which. "Can I come in?" Her voice was steady, but Elijah could see her hands shaking. He nodded, stepped back, let her into the small apartment that was nothing like the world she inhabited. The furniture was second-hand. The walls needed painting. Noah's toys were scattered across the living room floor. It was clean but shabby, the home of someone who worked multiple jobs to make rent. Victoria looked around, taking it all in, and Elijah felt shame crawl up his spine. This was what he had become. This was how far he had fallen from the dreams they used to share. "Noah's at a friend's house," Elijah said quietly. "I figured you'd come eventually. I wanted to talk without him here." Victoria turned to face him, and the look in her eyes was complex. Anger hurt confusion, and underneath it all, something that might have been longing. David. She said his real name like she was testing it, seeing if it still fit. "Is that still who you are? Or are you really Elijah now?" "I don't know anymore," he admitted. "I've been Elijah longer than I was David. Sometimes I forget which one is real." "Why?" The word came out sharp, accusatory. "Why did you disappear? Why did you let me believe you were dead? Why did you work as a busboy for 3 years in the same restaurant where you knew I ate, and you never said anything?" Elijah felt 15 years of suppressed explanations trying to force their way out at once. He didn't know where to start, so he started with the truth. "Your father had me beaten within an inch of my life and told me if I ever contacted you again, they'd finish the job. I left Chicago because staying meant dying, and I was young enough to believe that dying for love was romantic but stupid. I changed my name because your father had the resources to find me otherwise. I came back 6 years ago because I'm an idiot who couldn't stay away from the city where you lived, even knowing I could never have you." Victoria's face went white. "My father had you beaten, broken ribs, fractured wrist, internal bleeding. Spent 2 weeks in a Memphis hospital using a fake name because I was afraid to use my real one in case he tracked me down to finish what he started." Elijah pulled up his shirt, showing her the scars that still marked his torso. Old injuries that had healed wrong, that ached when it rained. He sent professionals. They made it very clear that your happiness was worth more than my life. And they were right. They were not right. Victoria's voice broke. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to disappear and make that choice for me. You would have thrown everything away for me, Elijah said urgently. Your family, your money, your future. I knew what poverty was like, Victoria. I knew what it meant to worry about rent and food and whether the heat would stay on through winter. I couldn't do that to you. I couldn't watch you struggle and know it was my fault. I loved you too much to let you destroy yourself for me. So you destroyed yourself instead. Victoria's voice was shaking now. You gave up music. You gave up your name. You gave up everything that made you who you were. For what? Some noble sacrifice I never asked for. I did what I had to do to keep you safe. Elijah's control was cracking. Your father made it clear that if I stayed in your life, he would ruin you. He would cut you off, destroy your reputation, make sure you never had the career you deserved. I couldn't let that happen. You were meant for bigger things than being poor with me. I was meant to be happy. Victoria was shouting now, tears streaming down her face. I was meant to be with you. I didn't care about the money or the career or any of it. I cared about you. I loved you. And you took that choice away from me like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with her own heart. You were 23 years old, Elijah shot back. You had never been poor. You had no idea what you were giving up. And you had no right to decide for me. Victoria stepped closer, her eyes blazing. You should have told me. You should have trusted me to make my own choices. Instead, you disappeared and let me spend 15 years thinking you never loved me at all. The words hit Elijah like a physical blow. You thought I didn't love you? What else was I supposed to think? Victoria's voice broke completely. You were so cruel that last night. You said things designed to make me hate you. You told me I was weak and spoiled. You told me I would never survive in your world. And then you vanished like I meant nothing. Like 3 years of love could be erased in one conversation. What was I supposed to think? Elijah felt his own tears starting hot and unstoppable. I thought if I made you hate me, it would be easier for you to move on. I thought if you believed I was a bastard who never really loved you, you could find someone better, someone worthy of you, someone who could give you the life you deserved. I didn't want someone worthy, Victoria whispered. I wanted you, just you, exactly as you were, and you never gave me the chance to prove it. They stood in the small living room, both of them crying now, 15 years of pain and misunderstanding and buried love flooding the space between them. Elijah wanted to reach for her, wanted to pull her into his arms and never let go. But he was afraid. Afraid that if he touched her, she would disappear. Afraid that this moment was some kind of dream or punishment. Afraid that he had no right to comfort her when he was the cause of her pain. I have a son, he said finally, because it needed to be said. Noah. He's 8. His mother died in childbirth. I've been raising him alone. Victoria nodded, wiping her eyes. I saw him at the restaurant. He looks like you. He's the best thing that ever happened to me, Elijah said softly. After you, after music, after everything I lost. Noah gave me a reason to keep going. He's why I came back to Chicago. I wanted him to grow up in a real city with opportunities I never had. I wanted him to have the chances I gave up. Did you love her? Victoria's voice was small. Noah's mother Elijah shook his head. Not the way you mean. Sarah was running from her own demons. We were both broken, both trying to survive. We found comfort in each other for a little while. But love, no. There's only ever been one woman I've loved. One woman I've never stopped loving even though I knew I could never have her. Victoria made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. I got married. Did you know that? 2 years after you left. Roger Ashford. Appropriate family, appropriate connections. My father approved. It was a disaster. He cheated. I didn't care. The divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me because it meant I could stop pretending. I knew Elijah admitted. I followed your life from a distance. Every article written about you. Every business success. Every photo of you looking powerful and untouchable. I told myself you were better off. That you had moved on. That you were happy. I haven't been happy in 15 years, Victoria said flatly. I built a company. I made billions. I became everything my father wanted me to be. And none of it meant anything because the only person I wanted to share it with was gone. The silence that fell between them was heavy with everything unsaid, everything lost, everything that could never be recovered. I saw you play that first night, Victoria said finally. At Emerald Heights. Before I knew who you were. And something in me recognized you. Not consciously, but somewhere deep down my heart knew. The way you played. The way you disappeared into the music. I've heard hundreds of pianists over the years. Concert halls, benefits, restaurants. And not one of them played like you. Not one of them made me feel the way you made me feel. Elijah's breath caught. Victoria. Let me finish, she interrupted. I need to say this. After you left, I couldn't listen to piano music anymore. It hurt too much. Every note reminded me of you, of practice rooms and stolen moments and a life I thought we would build together. I avoided it for years. And then that night when I heard you playing, it broke something open inside me that I thought was sealed forever. I shouldn't have played, Elijah said. I should have stayed invisible. But I heard they needed someone, and 15 years of silence got the better of me. One night. I thought one night wouldn't matter. I thought you wouldn't even notice. I noticed, Victoria said softly. How could I not notice? You think I don't carry you with me? Every accomplishment. Every success, every moment that should have meant something. You were the ghost I couldn't shake. The voice in my head wondering what you would think, whether you would be proud, whether you would have loved who I became. Elijah felt his heart breaking all over again. I've always been proud of you. Every article I read, every time I saw your name in the business section, you became everything I knew you could be, everything you deserved. But I wanted to become it with you, Victoria said, and her voice was raw now. I wanted you there. I wanted to share it. I wanted to come home to you after brutal board meetings and have you remind me who I really was underneath the suits and the power plays. I wanted you to meet the real me, the one I had to bury to survive in that world. The dam broke. Elijah closed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled Victoria into his arms. She came willingly, burying her face in his chest, her hands fisting in his shirt. He held her like she was the only solid thing in a world coming apart, like letting go would mean drowning. They stood like that for a long time, 2 people who had been separated by circumstances and choices, and pride finally admitting that distance had never actually existed. Not where it mattered, not in the places that counted. I'm sorry, Elijah whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. For leaving. For staying away. For all the years we lost. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I know, Victoria said against his chest. I understand why you did it. I even understand why you thought it was necessary. But David, Elijah, whoever you are now, you have to understand something too. You didn't just take the choice away from me. You took away my agency, my right to decide what risks I was willing to take. You made yourself the martyr and left me with nothing but grief and questions. You're right, he acknowledged. I was arrogant. I thought I knew what was best. I thought my suffering was noble. I thought sacrificing myself would somehow make your life better. But all I did was make us both miserable. Victoria pulled back slightly, looking up at him. In the afternoon light filtering through his apartment's windows, he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the threads of gray in her hair that expensive colorists usually hid. She had aged. They both had. The years showed on both their faces maps of the pain they had carried. But beneath the changes wrought by time and circumstance, they were still the same people who had fallen in love in practice rooms. Still the same souls who had recognized each other instantly. "I need you to understand something," Victoria said carefully. "I'm not the girl you fell in love with. That Victoria Sterling died a long time ago. I'm harder now, colder. I've had to be to survive in the world I chose. I don't know if the person I've become is someone you would even like, let alone love." "And I'm not the man you loved either," Elijah countered. David Mitchell had dreams and ambition, and believed music could change the world. Elijah Carter is a busboy with a criminal record from using a false identity. I'm tired. I'm scared most of the time. I work 3 jobs to make rent and keep Noah fed and in a decent school. I'm not the person you built up in your memory." They looked at each other honestly, seeing the damage, seeing the scars, seeing the ways life had changed them both. And then Victoria did something that made Elijah's breath stop. She smiled. Really smiled. The first genuine smile he had seen on her face in 15 years. "Good," she said, "because I don't want the memory. I don't want the fantasy of who we used to be. I want the reality of who we are now. If we're going to do this, if we're even going to try, it has to be real. No more martyrs, no more sacrifices, no more noble gestures that leave us both alone. Just truth. Just us. As we actually are." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Really talking. Elijah told her about the years after he left. The hospital in Memphis. The construction jobs that destroyed his hands. The night he met Sarah, and the bittersweet grief of becoming a father while losing Noah's mother. The slow, painful process of building a life from nothing. The day he decided to come back to Chicago because he couldn't stay away anymore, even knowing he could never have Victoria back. He told her about watching her from a distance, seeing her at charity events, reading about her in business journals, feeling proud and heartbroken in equal measure. He told her about Noah, about the joy and terror of raising a child alone, about the way becoming a father had changed him in ways he never expected. Victoria told him about her marriage, about Roger's affairs and her own emotional distance, about the divorce that had felt like relief rather than grief, about building Ashford Industries into an empire because work was the only thing that made sense when nothing else did, about the loneliness of success when you have no one to share it with, about the moments late at night when she would pull out old photos from the conservatory and let herself remember what it felt like to be young and in love, and stupid enough to believe that was all you needed. She told him about her father's stroke 3 years ago, about visiting him in the hospital and feeling nothing, about the realization that she had spent her entire adult life trying to please a man who had destroyed her one chance at real happiness. When Noah came home bursting through the door with the energy of an 8-year-old who had spent the day with friends, he stopped short, seeing a strange woman sitting on their couch. Elijah made the introduction carefully. "Noah, this is an old friend of mine, Victoria. She and I knew each other a long time ago." Noah, with the directness of children, studied Victoria carefully. "Are you the lady from the restaurant? The one who always sits at table 12? Victoria laughed, surprised. "You noticed me Dad's been weird ever since you started coming," Noah said matter-of-factly. "He drops stuff and forgets things. I figured it was because of you." Elijah felt his face heat. "Noah, that's not—" "It's okay, Dad," Noah interrupted. "Are you friends again? Because you've been sad for as long as I can remember. Maybe if you have friends, you'll be less sad." The simple observation from his son hit Elijah like a truck. Had he been that transparent? Had Noah always known there was something missing, some void in Elijah's life, that even his son's love couldn't fill? Victoria's eyes were wet again. She looked at Noah with something like wonder. "Your dad and I are trying to figure that out, but I'd like to be his friend, if that's okay with you." Noah considered this with the seriousness of a child making an important decision. Then he nodded. "Okay. But you have to promise not to make him sad. He's sad enough already." "I promise to try," Victoria said softly. And just like that, with the simple acceptance of a child who had never learned to complicate emotions with pride or fear, Noah accepted Victoria's presence in their lives. He went to his room to play, leaving the adults to navigate the much more complicated waters of what came next. 2 weeks later, Victoria made Elijah an offer that terrified him. Ashford Industries is hosting a charity gala. "We raise money for music education programs in underfunded schools. I want you to play." Elijah stared at her. "Victoria, I'm a busboy. I can't." "You're a pianist," she interrupted firmly. "One of the best I've ever heard. You gave up your dreams for me. The least I can do is give you a chance to reclaim them even for one night." "People will talk," Elijah said. "You're bored, you're investors. They'll want to know who I am, where I came from. They'll dig into my past." "Let them dig," Victoria said with the steel that had built empires. "I don't care what they think. I'm done living my life according to other people's expectations. I'm done pretending. If we're going to try this, if we're really going to see if we can build something from the ashes of what we lost, then we start by being honest about who we are, about who we've been, about what we mean to each other." Elijah wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go wrong. But looking at Victoria, seeing the determination in her eyes, he realized she was right. They had spent 15 years hiding, protecting themselves, playing it safe. And all it had brought them was loneliness. Maybe it was time to be brave. Maybe it was time to risk everything for the possibility of something real. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll play." The night of the gala, Elijah stood backstage in a rented tux that Victoria had insisted on buying, his hands shaking, wondering what the hell he was doing. This wasn't his world. These weren't his people. He was going to walk out onto that stage and everyone would see him for what he really was. A man who had failed. A man who had given up. A man who worked as a busboy because he didn't have the courage to be anything else. But then Noah appeared, dressed in a little suit, his hair carefully combed, his eyes shining with excitement. "You're going to be great, Dad. I can't wait to hear you play." And Victoria was there too, stunning in a black gown, looking at him with faith he didn't deserve. "You've got this," she whispered. "Just play. Play like you did in those practice rooms when it was just us and the music. Play like you mean it." Elijah walked onto the stage. The ballroom was filled with Chicago's elite, the same kind of people who used to be invisible to him when he cleared their tables. But he didn't look at them. He looked at the piano, this beautiful instrument waiting for him, and he sat down. His hands found the keys, and he played. He played Victoria's song, the piece he had written for her 20 years ago, the melody that had haunted him through 15 years of silence. He played every note of grief for the time they had lost, every chord of rage at the circumstances that had separated them, every bridge of hope for what they might still build. He played like he was 24 years old again and believed music could save the world. He played like he was 39 and knew better, but chose to believe anyway. The ballroom was silent when he finished. Not polite applause silence, but the kind of silence that comes when something has moved people beyond the ability to respond immediately. Then Victoria started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined. Until the entire ballroom was on its feet, applauding not just the performance, but the story behind it. The comeback, the resurrection, the man who had disappeared and returned. Elijah stood overwhelmed and found Victoria's eyes across the crowd. She was crying openly now, not caring who saw. And in that moment, Elijah realized something profound. He had spent 15 years thinking he had to be David Mitchell to be worthy of her love, that he had to reclaim his old identity, his old dreams, his old life. But Victoria wasn't in love with David Mitchell. She was in love with the man who had sacrificed everything to protect her, the man who had built a life from nothing to give his son a future, the man who had worked as a busboy with dignity and never complained. She loved Elijah Carter. All of him. Scars and struggles and second-hand furniture and all. After the gala, after the last guests had left, and the cleanup crew was breaking down tables, Victoria found Elijah outside on the terrace, looking out at the Chicago skyline. "You were incredible," she said softly. "Thank you," he replied, "for giving me this, for believing I could still do it." "I never stopped believing," Victoria said, "even when I didn't know who you were, even when you were just the busboy who could make a piano sing. I believed." They stood together in the cold November air, and Elijah felt something shift. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no magic solution to 15 years of separation, no way to erase the pain or the mistakes or the time they had lost. Victoria had her company to run. Elijah had his son to raise. They had baggage and trauma and wounds that were still healing. But they also had something they didn't have before. They had honesty. They had the truth laid bare between them. They had a choice to make together, rather than choices made in isolation. "I don't know how to do this," Elijah admitted. "I don't know how to date Victoria Ashford, CEO. I don't even know where we would start." "We start slow," Victoria said. "Coffee. Conversations. Getting to know who we are now, not who we were. We start by being honest about what we need and what we can give. We start by not making grand gestures or noble sacrifices. We start by being real." "I can do real," Elijah said. "Real is all I've got." Victoria took his hand, scarred and calloused, and laced her fingers through his. "Real is all I want." 3 months later, Elijah Carter enrolled at DePaul University to finish his music degree. He was 39 years old, sitting in classes with students half his age, and he didn't care. Victoria had offered to pay his tuition, but he had refused. He took out student loans like everyone else. This was his dream to reclaim, and he needed to do it on his own terms. He still worked part-time at Emerald Heights, though now as their featured pianist on weekends. Thomas had been thrilled to make the arrangement official. The tips were better, the hours more manageable, and Elijah could schedule around his classes. Victoria cut back her hours at Ashford Industries, delegating more to her executive team. She was still CEO, still building her empire, but she made time for things that mattered. Tuesday night dinners with Elijah and Noah. Saturday afternoons at Noah's soccer games. Sunday mornings making pancakes in Elijah's small kitchen while they argued about music theory and life philosophy. They hadn't moved in together. They hadn't made any grand pronouncements about their future. They were taking it slow, learning each other again, building something new from the foundation of what they had once been. Some days were harder than others. There were arguments about Elijah's pride and Victoria's need for control. There were moments when old wounds would resurface, when the past would intrude on the present. But they worked through it. Together. With honesty and patience and the kind of love that had survived 15 years of separation and came out stronger for it. Noah thrived with Victoria in his life. She taught him about business and technology. He taught her how to play video games and appreciate cartoons. They formed their own relationship independent of Elijah, and watching them together made Elijah's heart feel too large for his chest. One evening, as they sat together in Victoria's penthouse apartment, Noah asked the question that had been building for months. "Are you going to marry my dad?" Victoria looked at Elijah, and they had one of those silent conversations that couples develop over time. Then she looked back at Noah with complete honesty. "I don't know yet. Maybe. Your dad and I are still figuring things out, but whether we get married or not, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." Noah considered this, then nodded. "Good. You make him less sad, and you're teaching me piano better than he does." Elijah laughed, the sound coming easier now. Traitor. This was their new normal. Imperfect, complicated, real. Victoria Ashford, tech mogul, dating Elijah Carter, busboy turned student, raising a child together in a patchwork family that didn't look like anyone's idea of traditional. Building something that had no blueprint, no guarantee, no fairy tale promise of happily ever after. But it was theirs, built on honesty and second chances, and the stubborn belief that love, real love, doesn't disappear just because life gets hard. It waits. It endures. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough and brave enough and stupid enough to try again, it comes back stronger than before. Because 15 years apart had taught them something that all the love songs and romantic movies never mention. Love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing or being ready. Love is about showing up, day after day, in the messy, complicated, imperfect reality of actual life. It's about choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Elijah Carter. Formerly David Mitchell played piano in a restaurant where he used to clear tables. Victoria Ashford, who had built an empire on ruins of grief, sat in the audience every Friday night and listened. And somewhere between the music and the silence between the past they had lost and the future they were building, they found what they had been searching for all along. Not redemption, not rescue, just real, honest, complicated love. The kind that survives, the kind that matters, the kind that's worth waiting 15 years to reclaim. If you've ever lost someone and wondered if love could survive the distance, if you've ever sacrificed your dreams for someone else, if you've ever believed that some connections are too deep to ever truly sever, then you know this truth. The heart doesn't forget. It waits. And sometimes when you're brave enough to be honest, when you're willing to risk everything one more time, it finds its way home.